Our first story for tonight begins on a holiday, a time meant for family and warmth, but it takes a dark turn on a lonely road. The drive from my grandmother's house after Thanksgiving dinner is usually a peaceful 45-minute journey. The feast is always incredible, and seeing my relatives makes the trip completely worthwhile. This particular year was no different, with great food and wonderful family time. It was a perfect holiday, right up until the moment I started my drive home. Earlier that day, as I was leaving for my grandma's, I noticed my fuel light was on. I was feeling a bit lazy and figured I would just stop at a station near her place. But with all the excitement of the holiday, the thought completely vanished from my mind. I didn't remember about the gas until I was already at her house. I told myself it would be fine. I calculated I had enough fuel for at least 30 miles, and the nearest gas station on my route home was only about 10 miles away. I'd just fill up as soon as I left. What I didn't fully appreciate was how inaccurate the fuel gauge on my old 2001 pickup truck could be. With over 275,000 miles on it, the truck had its quirks. Sure enough, on the dark country road home, my engine sputtered and died. I was stranded. I checked my phone, but there was no signal. My grandmother lived in a fairly remote area, and now I was stuck in an even more isolated spot. My only option was my own 2 feet. Fortunately, I kept an empty gas can in the bed of my truck. It was a small comfort, but it meant I could walk to the gas station, get fuel, and return. The night was pitch black with very few houses around, which made the situation feel incredibly unsettling. I estimated it was about a 3-mile walk. After walking for about 15 minutes, headlights appeared behind me and a truck slowed to a stop. The driver rolled down his window. "Looks like your old beast finally gave up on you," he said. "Hey, I'm heading to the gas station. Why don't you hop in?" I felt a wave of unease and politely declined his offer. No, thank you. I appreciate it, though." He seemed genuinely offended by my refusal. "Are you serious? You'd rather walk? What, do you think I'm some kind of monster?" he pressed. He cut off my stammered excuses. "Look, just get in. You can walk for another hour, or I can have you at the station and back to your truck in 10 minutes. His logic, combined with my exhaustion, unfortunately convinced me. It was a decision I immediately regretted. Once I was in his truck, with my empty gas can at my feet on the floorboard, he tried to sound reassuring, saying he was just a good guy doing a good deed. For a moment, I felt a little better, but that feeling quickly evaporated. His speech became disjointed, and he started mumbling to himself. I asked if he was okay, but he completely ignored me. Then, he drove right past the glowing lights of the gas station. "Hey, you missed the turn," I said, my voice shaking slightly. He turned and looked directly at me, his eyes cold. "We're not playing by your rules anymore. Now be quiet if you know what's good for you. You're going to do exactly as I say, or this will end very badly." Panic set in. I started yelling at him to stop and let me out, but he just screamed back at me to shut up. I fumbled for the door handle in the dark, planning to jump out if he slowed down for a turn. But the handle wouldn't budge. I realized with horror that the interior door mechanism had been removed. My options were disappearing. I remembered I had a can of pepper spray in my jacket pocket. I knew it was a massive risk to use it on a driver, but it was my only chance. I pulled it out and sprayed him directly in the face. The truck immediately began to swerve wildly. I grabbed the steering wheel, trying to guide us away from oncoming traffic and toward the shoulder of the road. I braced for impact as we veered off the road and crashed into a ditch, hitting a small tree. My head slammed against the passenger window, and everything went fuzzy for a second. When my vision cleared, the man was slumped over the wheel, unconscious. I scrambled over his body and out the driver's side door. I snatched my gas can from the floor of the wrecked truck and ran. I ran the entire way back to that gas station without stopping, fueled by pure adrenaline. When I finally burst through the door, I explained the situation to the clerk and used their phone to call the police. They arrived within minutes and drove me back to my truck. After making sure I wasn't seriously injured, they took my statement. The man was gone when they checked the crash site, and they discovered the truck he was driving had been stolen. They never found him. Our next story is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most mundane moments can suddenly become a scene of intense danger. I work the second shift at a hospital, so my drive home is always late at night, sometime between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. It's a 25-minute drive, and I usually take the highway to get home faster. I was particularly tired this one night after working a lot of overtime. About halfway home, a car seemed to materialize out of nowhere behind me. This was unusual, as the highway is typically deserted at that hour. The car flew past me, probably doing close to 90 miles per hour. I watched as it sped ahead, but then its behavior became erratic. The car started weaving between lanes, and its speed changed dramatically. It would accelerate rapidly, then slam on the brakes, then speed up again. It was far more chaotic than a typical drunk driver. A terrible feeling washed over me, so I decided to get a little closer to see what was happening. What I saw is something I'll never forget. Through the rear window, I could see the male driver repeatedly striking a woman in the back seat with some kind of object. I couldn't believe my eyes. I immediately called 911 and reported everything I was seeing, giving the dispatcher our location, direction of travel, the license plate number, and a description of the car and its occupants. The dispatcher advised me not to follow them, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I had to make sure that woman was saved. I continued to follow them for another 7 or 8 minutes until I heard sirens approaching from behind. The man heard them too and pushed his car, a PT Cruiser, as fast as it would go. I moved over to let the police pass but kept a safe distance, determined to see it through. The chase ended when the man swerved off the highway into a large field. The car spun out of control and barrel rolled at least 5 times before coming to a stop. He crawled out of the wreckage and tried to run, but the police quickly caught and tased him. An officer pulled the woman from the car. She was horribly beaten, covered in cuts and bruises. I later learned she had been kidnapped from a nearby bar just 45 minutes earlier, and the man was heavily intoxicated. He's now facing numerous felony charges. I'm scheduled to testify as a witness against him later this year. I have no regrets about what I did. When your gut tells you something is wrong, you should listen. This last account shows how a simple change of plans can lead you into a very dangerous situation. One evening, I was scheduled to meet my friend after he finished his shift at work. Since he didn't have a car at the time, I was his ride. He was supposed to get off at 7 p.m., but I arrived about 15 minutes early and texted him to let him know I was there. He replied a few minutes later, apologizing. He said he was being held over and wouldn't be done for about another hour. I was a little annoyed at first, but it wasn't his fault. To pass the time, I decided to just drive around and listen to some music. After a while, my stomach started to rumble. I decided on McDonald's and ate my meal in their parking lot. I still had about 40 minutes to kill, so I started driving again, this time wandering onto some quiet back roads. I was scrolling through my phone while driving slowly, which I know was foolish, but the roads were empty. Suddenly, a car appeared behind me. I didn't think anything of it and sped up a bit to get closer to the speed limit. The car quickly caught up and got dangerously close to my bumper. I was irritated. This driver was tailgating me for no reason, as there was no oncoming traffic for him to pass. He followed me like this for several miles. My friend Daniel texted me that he'd be out in about 20 minutes, so I started heading toward the gas station where he worked. It was then that I noticed the car was still behind me, even after I had made 4 consecutive turns. He had backed off slightly, but he was definitely still following me. The gas station was in a rural area with only a few houses nearby. When I pulled into the empty parking lot, my heart sank. As the other car pulled in right beside me, the driver rolled down his window and started trying to talk to me. I ignored him, pretending I couldn't hear. My pretense didn't work. He got out of his car, walked over to my window, and started banging on the glass, screaming at me to unlock my door. As I was frantically trying to get my phone out to call for help, Daniel walked out of the station. "Hey, what are you doing? Get away from his car," Daniel yelled. The stranger turned on him. "And what are you going to do about it?" he snarled, stepping toward Daniel aggressively. In response, Daniel simply lifted his shirt, revealing a handgun tucked into his waistband. The man's aggressive demeanor vanished instantly. He backed away, got into his car, and sped off into the night. I still have no idea what that man wanted. Maybe he was on drugs or had mistaken me for someone else. Whatever his motive was, I'm just grateful Daniel was there. It was a stark reminder that danger can appear out of nowhere, and sometimes the ability to protect yourself is all that matters.